what maybe should be done as far as changing the charter back to the council, and then the council has a decision whether or not to put it on the ballot or not. But it's our job to kind of discuss it, pick it apart, give our own opinion on it. I don't know that we'll have anything to talk about, but we will have some more meetings, I'm sure, between now and next August, when things, I understand, need to be finalized if there is a need, because any changes have to be put on the ballot and actually decided by the voters.
So if you've been on this, excuse me, if you've been on this for quite a while, Dave, so then if this is goofed up, we can put it on you.
Yeah. Broad shoulders. And I can run fast.
For a distance.
Robert Brianna.
Well, I'm here originally because Ray and Julie twisted my arm. And then after that, I really wanted to do it anyway because I'm with Diane. I'm really interested. I've never done the charter before. I'm on the budget committee, but I really wanted to get into what the charter says and what we can do about it and get to know more about it.
And do you prefer Bob over Robert, or do you care?
Anything but wait for dinner.
Okay, gotcha. Lisa Wilson.
I am here. I volunteered, and you actually stole my complete answer. So what she said, just double that. But I seriously, I really want to learn more about the way that small towns are run, and it's really interesting to me. And so maybe we won't change anything, but in the process, hopefully I learn a lot about Sweet Home. I love Sweet Home, so that's the main reason I'm here, because I really do care.
And Tim McCreary, can you hear us?
He didn't, he ended up hanging up, so
Okay.
I sent him the call-in details, hopefully he'll be.
Okay. Zach Lincoln was our last appointee. However, Zach has moved out of city limits. So we do have a vacancy. That being said, we do have an interested citizen, David Loman. David serves on our budget committee as well. This was his first year on there. We may try to twist David's arm into.
Will there be any conflict since I am running for council?
I don't think so.
Okay. It would change it.
Right, if you get elected, yeah, okay. At that point, then we'd have to have a discussion.
I'd like to, there are some parameters that you just need to know about as they're out there. One is this is a very good booklet, but there is also, if you want to get and put it in the book, there's a model code from the league that's available. At least it was last time. I got it in my old book. The one thing about the charter is that, as you know, it's got to go out to be voted on. And so the idea is that you need to keep in the back of your head, for one thing, is that you don't want to put stuff in the charter that may or may not need to be changed as things go along, because it's hard to change. You got to take it to the voters. You can stick a lot of stuff in an ordinance that goes through council. Is hard enough to change. I mean, it goes through the debating process and it goes through the 3 readings and it goes through whatever, but it's changeable. A lot easier than your charter. So the thing that you got to realize is if you stick it in the charter, you're basically stuck with it. An example of that is the issue that's come up. We don't want to read the ordinance. We've put out the last time, or the time before, I think it was the time before, my memory serves, we put that out to be, taken out of the charter, the voters turned it down, said read it. And so, you know, that was a while ago, whatever. Another thing that was brought up by, council, was that he wanted to look at, how we elect the, mayor. I remember that he wanted to, whether you put it in an ordinance or in the charter or whatever, but that might be an issue there. Somebody might want to discuss. But that's one of the big things on a charter is that it's something that if you stick it in there, you're going to be stuck with it until the voters change it, which may or may not have. They may not have the same idea that you have. But you're stuck with it.
So Bob, I have a question for you. So I saw where there's two kinds of charters, a general law charter and a home rule charter. So is Oregon under a general law charter?
We are, they don't put this in stone, but I believe we're under the home rule.
Oh, we are?
Yes, we're under the home rule. And that's my understanding. And it isn't so much as state to state that you've got to worry about, is city to city. If you look up the ORS, the Oregon Revised Statute, there's a section in there and it says, if the city is incorporated under such and such, it shall follow these things. So you look up and say, we're not following that. Well, you've got to figure out when you were incorporated and what you were incorporated under the statute here, or were you incorporated under the charter, the Constitution before that sort of thing. So you don't want to get sidelined by reading the ORS because it may or may not apply to you. You've got to realize that what's in the ORS, or Oregon Revised Statutes, doesn't necessarily apply to every city because it depends on you first. The first question is when and under what were you incorporated? And then that tells you where it is. And I think that's where we get our home rule. Because our first provision in our charter is the home rule. It says that we can do everything that's allowable, blah, 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 take care of city business.
Go against the state constitution.
Yeah, except for the state constitution and criminal laws. Those are the two that you can't put your charter above, but everything else, the charter can basically rule the deal. Where we come across this is, of course, is when you bring it out, is the fact is that the home rule is important if you're on one side saying that we as a city need to decide the issues ourselves. And the other side, of course, is we've gone through this before with different issues. The state has preempted the area for whatever reason. And those are the two that are jostling for power or authority to get the job done. Is it home rule? Are you doing it under home rule authority, or are you doing it under a state statute where they preempted the area in some way, shape, or form? And so that's where the home rule is brought up usually is a one side of the coin for arguing who should have the power to decide whatever issue you're thinking about.
Okay, thank you.
But I understand we're a home rule.
I think also that the League of Oregon City recommended charter languages or things that we did look at those last.
Yes, we did. We had a copy.
And I think we decided as a committee that our charter in a lot of cases made a lot more sense than their recommended language. And I don't know, it could have to do with the different types of home rule versus the other.
Yeah. They've got some stuff in there, if I remember correctly, about quasi-judicial proceedings, and they break it down into all of that. And in my opinion, when you look at that, if you get a copy of it, or these other ones may have it, truthfully, I think that can be put in an ordinance. We've got an ordinance that you can stick that in, so if you need to change it or whatever, it's basically a procedural type of mechanism, and if you need to change the procedure or it isn't working right for you, you can pass an ordinance or amend your ordinance, you know? I get back to the first issue, I don't think you should put in the charter anything that you just don't want to live with in that condition for a long time, because that's the way it'll be. That's why we read things 3 times, and that's why we still read them, is because it's in the charter.
I think an example, a really good example is, the charter says there will be a set of council rules, but they don't specify what those rules will be. And that allows the council to have some flexibility and decide the best way for them to operate. And that instead is done by ordinance. If you put in council rules in the charter, there would be no flexibility for the council to decide on how they should actually function.
I have a question. So I'm sure there's a reason why we have all of these different cities. Okay? There's got to be something in here that either you've seen or no.
No, so what we've tried to do is come up with cities that are like us as much as possible, which is difficult for many reasons. So the cities that you see in here, minus, I think, Adair Village. Minus, I think, Adair Village are ones that we have used recently for salary surveys. And what we've done is we've looked at them and they are similar in population. They are similar in budget. And they are somewhat regional to us. Now, if you look, there's 3 blank spots in here that we can add more to, and that's part of the discussion that we should probably have, is are there other places you want to look at? The model code, I should have included that, that's my oversight. I should have printed that out and absolutely should have included it in here. So I will do that so that it's available for you. Either I'll print them out and deliver them to you or email them to you or whatever is convenient. But there are others. I just chose these because they're ones that we've been using for other things. It's a starting point. We can trash them. You can say you don't want to use them. You can do whatever you'd like to do. We're just trying to give us a starting point.
So there really weren't anything that you brought up or thought about that you saw that you wanted to change or except with a read.
Yeah, you know, it is what it is. We're going to function within whatever parameters we're given. If the committee decides that the finance director has to stand on their head every month when they're giving their report, Brandon will get really good at headstands. Or find a new job. So you know, we'll live with whatever is decided. One of the things that did bring this, though, is council has a goal for us to be as efficient and effective of a government as possible. And this is where that starts. So yeah, it's reading, when you have to read something 3 times, that's 6 weeks, plus the additional 30 days before it takes effect. And anything gets messed up, you get a fire or a pandemic, and now when you're trying to be responsive to your community, you're 3 months out. So
I'll put in the proviso. I understand. Nobody likes to read it. Brandon's come up with a solution to do it with a British accent, which is good.
Male or female?
appreciate it. I understand what Ray's saying, but you also need to know, on the other hand, if you wanted to, with an ordinance, if you wanted to, you think it's emergency and you have to get it through, you've got it all written up, you can put it to council one night. If everybody's agreeable, it's here, according to charter, you can read it the first time, read it by title the second time, have a special meeting the next week or the next day, if you've already listed it, have this reading the third time, have an emergency clause in it, and have it effective in 48 hours.
And I think that would be a mistake.
I understand. Well, you can do that right now,
Yeah.
but we usually don't. But I'm just saying,
There's an alternative.
there's an alternative.
Yeah.
If you've got everybody's support, you know, you can cut it down. You can have special meetings to shorten that time frame if you think it's important to do. I mean, there is that option there. But like Ray said, it usually goes one reading, then two readings, then three readings, and then 30 days. The benefit to that I see is maybe everybody else just does two readings, maybe that's enough. But if you've got, in my opinion, you should have at least more than once, because you catch things that you, even if you read it 4 times before, still adhere, you still catch things that you don't catch unless you read it out loud, unless you diagnose it at least twice, 3 times. Because sometimes it's the third reading. You don't try to do that because just you try to minimize it here and minimize it here and minimize it here, but sometimes there's a few little changes even at the third reading.
I do remember that happening with
And that may
with
be-
one of them on the third.
Yeah,
reading.
and that may be not even because of it wasn't caught, it may be because somebody's brought up something that they want changed. Yeah, so I'm just not I guess I see a little different. I've got basically the power, because I know that how the system works, to reduce the time and have it out. I just see that it's a way of catching things before they become ordinance, not because it just catches things.
And Alex, Paul, and Sean Morgan will agree with you 100%. In just discussions with them, they've said, Ray, I hope you guys never get rid of having to read those out loud.
Well, I think if this does become one of the things that we consider, that one thing that we can look at is stay with the 3 readings, but after the third reading, we do away with the 30 days.
Yeah, I don't
Then
think,
it becomes,
the only thing, I'd have to look that up. I don't know if you're stuck with the 30 days because of state law. I'm thinking that it's one of those provisions in the ORS. I don't know if it'll just apply. It's like you say, like I said, freaking, you got to read it real close to see if it applies to you or just goes incorporated after such and such time. But no, I think that's where they actually get it. It's actually an ORS. I'm just not sure that it actually has to apply to us.
but the emergency clause must supersede it.
It does, it does. You can get rid of it with an emergency clause. All you gotta do is put in a paragraph that says, this is why we're having an emergency, this is the emergency, this is why we're having it, you know, you can get rid of it. Yeah.
So Brandon has found ORS chapter 221.
Yeah,
Shall take effect 30 days after.
Except for ordinances necessary for the immediate health, peace, or safety.
right.
An ordinance enacted by the council of the city
Yep.
shall take effect 30 days
Yeah,
after.
it depends on where you're reading that. That's what I was referring to, but it also, I just raised up the hand. You have to watch where you read those things from. I'm not saying this one, I'm just saying, again, sometimes those things only apply to those, it's made for that incorporation after a certain date. Otherwise, you're left to your own devices. But it is written in there, and that's why you got it, just like the mayor form is written in there if you look up the ORS, but if you aren't under that particular incorporation, I don't think you have to abide by it.
And this is under 221-310,
Yeah.
and it's from the Oregon Legislature's website, so it's still valid.
Right, but what I'm saying is, you've got to watch when you read those things about cities in those sections, is that they're predicated on when you were incorporated, whether they apply. I'm not sure that one does, but some of them do. You just have to be careful.
So in a nutshell, we may spend hours and hours in here talking, debating, reviewing, and have no recommendations for changes when we walk out. So, which would be fine, absolutely fine. But at least we've looked, at least we've done our homework, we've been diligent and done the things that we need to do to do what's best for our community, so. You have your books in front of you, we just talked. I will get that model from the League of Oregon Cities and print that out, and my apologies. We wanted to talk about the methodology of how we want to work through these. One thing I think that you will find is some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Some of them have things in different places. Section 3 might be section 7, but the titles cover the same entities. Or the same topics, I should say. How do we want to go about reviewing them? How do we want to try, do you want to try and tackle just some specific areas? Are there certain things we don't want to touch? Those kinds of things. So what I would suggest is that we use hours as the baseline. And then we may have to go through and find, like if we say for the next meeting, we want to cover sections, we want to cover chapters 1 through 4 at our next meeting. And I'm just throwing those out there. Do they correlate to 1 through 4 of these other ones? Maybe, maybe not. So we might have to do a little digging. Is there a different way you want to go through them? Is there a way you've done it before that's worked out better? I think what we're looking to do is just try to decide amongst the group of how do we want to go through them and at what pace.
Well, there's only 2 people in this room that's been through it.
Right.
The last time, if I remember correctly, and this was done with, this was cut and paste, and I don't mean on a computer. Okay. Laying it out, cutting it, and taking it and Xeroxing it, where Sweet Home's sections up here, then in each one of those, we found the corresponding or whatever in all of them and stuck them all in a line so that you could say, you know, flow, this is what it does. When we do this, this is what it does if it's got a corresponding. That's how we looked at it section by section last time.
Probably be a lot easier now with computers. Could probably do it.
For most of us, it will be.
Yeah. My idea, if I help on that, I will pick out the ones and identify them and somebody else can line them all up.
So for some of that, it will be easy.
Yeah.
For some of these, if you look, theirs were literally typed and photocopied and then scanned in.
Yeah, Dare Village.
Yeah, Sheridan. So I will reach out. I got to imagine that they have them, you know, in a newer format somewhere. But yeah, I'll reach out and try to find those, or we'll start typing one or the other.
I'm not sure from my point of view that it's important that all of us read all of those. When I was talking about homework, I meant everybody could take a city and look at that city as it pertained to chapters 1 through 4 in ours, and then bring that back to the committee, and then somebody else would do a different city. That way we aren't all having to read this whole thing. And that's kind of where I was coming from on it. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but
I think that's a good idea.
it seemed to me like it would be easier to do it that way.
I have dibs on state. So if we do it that way, I'd like to have state.
But then if you do it that way, you'd be asking a committee member to make a decision on whether or not to go forward based on a discussion rather than him or her actually reading the thing and see how they compare. I'd rather read them all myself. That way I know what's being discussed. I mean, if I have to be responsible for city number 3 and someone comes in with proposed changes based on what's in city number 5, then I'm scrambling to try and catch up. I'm going to read them all regardless of how you want to end up doing it, but I don't want to be in a position to not have all the information that I can gather while I have it in front of me.
You don't trust us.
And not that I don't trust you, I just think, if I'm gonna have to make a decision, I want it to be based on what I've looked at and what I've read from the start.
Well, what if we looked at it from a different perspective than looking at it? This is another thought I had, than looking at it chapter by chapter. But as I understand it, the document should contain the organization, the powers, the functions, and the essential procedures. So what if we, if you want to look at all of the cities, if we took just one thing, let's say the organization of the city, and looked at all of the cities and looked at ours and compared all of those ourselves as the organization of the body. And that's one aspect of it. I'm a little leery of assigning everybody to do all of it and everything. I understand, Dave, where you're coming from, and I don't have a problem with you doing that, because I'll probably end up doing it myself, but I don't want to ask everybody else to do it that way either. So if we looked at just the organization of the city, how's the city put together, and if in all of those cities, just that one piece of it, and then talked about that and see how if we want to stay the way we are, do we want to elect our mayor or don't we? I mean, you know, those are the kinds of things we would look at under organization. Do we want to keep 7 council members, or do we want 5 or 9, or, you know, I mean, those kinds of things. And then we look under the powers of the council, and how do other cities do that, and how do we do it, and is that the way we want to do it? Those are just the 4 things that I saw that the document should contain. So.
Well, I will read them all too. Disagree just a little bit. You know, we signed up for this process to do the research that we need to do. And if that includes 6 of them, then that's, in my opinion, that's what I think everybody should have to read all of them. If we're gonna have to go through those ordinances for 3 weeks, then I think that it would be in everybody's interest to read them all. I have, when I read this, I have pages turned that I wanted to talk about. And so we can compare this to this, and in my opinion now, and do just exactly what Dave says, because I wouldn't want to be on the short end of that either. But I'll go with whatever you want to do. That's just, but I'm going to read them all too, just like Diane, and I know Dave will. And
I'm gonna
whoever
read
else.
them all too.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of thought we would still read them all on our own, and then I may have misunderstood your suggestion, but I thought everybody read them all and then really hone in on one and see how it differs from ours. But it makes sense that everybody should just take notes and read them all.
If you want to read them all, let's do it.
How many are there? How many sections
there's,
In the charter, is there exactly?
I don't know.
Well, there's usually, like ours is what, 6 pages long, something like
Yeah, it's
that?
not very long.
They shouldn't be very long. They should be about 6 pages or 8 pages long.
I'm asking how many sections are there?
Well, here's one that
6
has
pages.
here's one that has 5 chapters. Here's another one that has 11. So, and they're very short, so,
And I would guess that some of them have to be similar to what we have too. I would think.
Ours seems pretty short.
Well, it's really short.
You're right, in the 2014, right, it got shrunk by about 6 or 7 pages.
Yeah, I cut it in half.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty short. I'm reading some of these from the other city and they get into some lengthy discussions about many things other than what's in ours.
Well,
And from what I've read from 2 of them already, or 3 of them, they only read twice. And then an after.
that's what we're ready with.
And most of the cities will just read twice in 30 days.
There's validity somewhere buried under all of the methodology that you're gonna read, whether it's the mayor being elected by the city as a whole and the councilors representing wards or districts, to what we do now. Actually, our election process, I think, is completely unique. They all have their advantages. It's a matter of what do we think is our best fit for our community.
Just on that, just because I got it in my brain, when I was reading the part that it doesn't apply to us, I don't believe, but again, it's what's in the ORS, so when you go there, sometimes you get sidelined, but it does set up a procedure like ours.
For
the mayor, it has the city councilors electing the mayor, yeah, it's in the.
That's normal. I would say that's probably more normal than, at least in my experiences, that's probably more normal in a council manager form of government than not.
Than the people doing it.
Than the people electing the
Right.
mayor.
Okay.
Normally, if the people are electing the mayor, it's a strong mayor form of government, and that mayor essentially at that point then does the day-to-day operations, and they
Yeah.
become almost an employee.
Right.
And under those too, you end up with a mayor with veto power,
Often.
you know?
Right.
Yeah, a weak mayor one is one that has suited us, you know, all along. I can see some validity in electing him large, but when you look at everything as a whole, probably the way we do it is best.
Well, as we all know, there's a lot of mayors in the bigger cities, but I think, is Oregon City one of the only ones that has, or is it Beaverton? Do they have a strong mayor here?
I want to say there's only like 2 or
Yeah, there's not very many.
2 cities in all of Oregon that have a strong
Yeah,
mayor.
I think Beaverton's one of them. I don't know, I won't, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's one.
In Washington, there's several more. It's not quite 50-50, but Washington has a lot of cities that have strong mayors.
Doesn't most cities that have strong mayors don't have city managers? Because
Usually
strong
so.
mayors are paid.
So usually what happens is a mayor is elected, and then the mayor hires an administrator, which essentially becomes their chief of staff. Spokane is that way, for instance, and I use Spokane because my old boss is now the administrator for the city of Spokane, works for a strong mayor. Ephrata, where I came from, was a strong mayor. They were council manager, switched to a strong mayor, and then the mayor turned around and hired the old city manager to be his administrator. So it really did nothing but create a whole other layer of government to work through.
But most small cities like Sweet Home don't really have a strong mayor. They have a mayor and a council. You know, city that I came from Florida, we voted councils and as well as the mayor by wards. So, you know, you got to vote for one person, whereas here, you get to vote for 4 people. And, we didn't have a strong mayor because it was a small city. You know, usually a big, strong mayor usually runs in a, what, 300,000 or more community. You know,
A larger
not a 10,000 people,
Right.
because then the city can't afford to pay, you know, a salary like that.
Correct, absolutely.
Albany has, is elected, their council is elected by ward. They have 2 people in each ward, and then their mayor has veto power, but that's about it.
Right.
And they have a city manager, so they're still a council manager form of government, but are
Does
elected.
their mayor vote?
No,
There doesn't,
does
only
not,
votes in case of a tie.
right,
Okay.
but does have veto power.
Corvallis has wards too.
Yes.
Same thing.
I believe Lebanon also has that.
Lebanon does too, yeah. Okay, well, then I guess the consensus is that we'll read all these. Shall we start by doing chapters 1 through 4 in the Sweet Home ordinance compared to other the Sweet Home charter compared to other charters? How does that sound? Chapters 1 through 4?
Sections 1 through 4.
Okay. And when do we should set a timeline of this for meetings. Is this a good time to meet? The only time this would be a
Russ,
problem
let her
is if
retire.
we have executive.
Tease at the casino, unless you're at the casino, you're away.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and I can always come, I can check in my phone if I'm over there.
And can you play and check in at the same time?
Oh, yeah, I
Okay.
can walk and chew gum.
So Ray, if we have executive session though, then that won't work.
So what do you?
How often are you looking to meet? Are you-
I don't know, how often do you think we need to meet?
But when does it have to be done? August or something next
Well,
year?
I think we need to look at our end timeline
Yeah.
and decide then, are we gonna have to have 3
Well, I
meetings?
have it to the city council by March.
I'd say we need probably 3 meetings between now and when it goes to city council. We should be able to cover everything.
You're going to cover 4 sections at a time. We need more. I think maybe.
I don't think we should meet any longer than an hour. We kind of get decision fatigue if we meet longer than an hour. That's my new terminology, decision fatigue. I just read that and loved it. That's where I've been for 3
Well,
weeks.
So you can do it, you can do it 3 meetings, you can have,
There's 33 sections, so
How many?
33. That's
and
what
we're gonna be covering sections 1 through 7, aren't we?
1 through 4.
1
Well,
through
chapter-
4? How about 1 through 7? That gets you down to the next, that gets you cleared out, that gets you down to election.
Well, let's clarify the difference between sections and chapters.
Right.
Some places have sections, some places have chapters.
Well,
We have
I'm talking
both,
about chapters.
yeah,
right?
so you're thinking in the Sweet Home Charter, we should be on chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
We're
so
going by
you,
chapter.
yeah,
That's
right.
I
So
thought
you
you go
should
by
be
section.
able to do them in 3 meetings. You covered 4 of them at a time.
Okay, so who do you want to meet next?
I think if we have to meet 3 times, I think if we do that. December's a bad month, so that won't probably be a good time to do it.
How about if we meet before the last meeting of October? The last council meeting in October. What's the last council meeting in October, Ray?
27th.
The 27th? What if we meet prior to that?
All right.
On the 20th?
5:30?
Sounds like-
Let's meet at 5 o'clock. That could give us an hour and a half. It's no longer than an hour and a half. So let's meet at 5 o'clock on
The 20th,
October 27th.
okay. Is that before council?
Yes.
Okay, I can live with that. I think if we have the second council meeting every time, it would be more consistent to what we could do.
As long as we don't have an executive session coming up.
Yeah.
And we could always do executive sessions after the council meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. That will make councilors unhappy. Okay,
The ones who want to go to sleep.
so chapters 1 through 4 in the Sweet Home Charter compared to other 8 others. Okay? Okay, October
Alright.
27th, call me if you need me, or
Alright.
email me, it's on the list of, Ray gave everybody's connection in the book, so I think, didn't you? Yeah.
Tell Julie she did a great job.
Julie didn't do it.
Julie didn't do that?
Julie's been gone all week.
Really?
Yep.
Who did that? Raymondo, good job, you. Good job.
Thank you all.
I'll end now before Dave says something.